Hey everyone, welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of Gabbie Hanna. Again, this is part 2 of this 2-part series, which is addressing Gabbie Hanna, addressing their entire TikTok fiasco that went down just a bit ago. Let's go ahead and roll the intro, and then we'll probably just dive right on into the analysis itself. You are seeing today's video by the support of our friends over at NordVPN. Now, pumpkin spice lattes are back, and with that comes the crisp fall coffee shop-esque weather. If you plan on visiting any coffee shops for work or school, especially during the cooler months, I suggest you protect yourself and your data online by signing up for NordVPN. The public Wi-Fi that you join at cafes or coffee shops, airports, so on and so forth is vulnerable to cyber attacks from people that are looking to gather your personal information. NordVPN offers a selection of security features that helps keep that information safe and protected behind a wall of next generation encryption. You activate this protection by joining one of the over 5,400 private servers scattered across the globe. By joining one of these servers, you will not only be protecting your online presence, but you'll also mask your actual location, unlocking the global internet experience. They have recently also introduced a new feature called Threat Protection. With Threat Protection, you can step up your cybersecurity by using Nord's desktop app. Once it is activated, it protects from malicious sites, downloads, trackers, and intrusive ads. It's constantly on even if you aren't connected to a VPN server at the time, so you could browse the internet with a higher sense of safety. So take control of your internet experience today with NordVPN. You can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount plus 4 additional months for free when you go to nordvpn.com/observe. It is risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee. That is nordvpn.com/observe, or you can click the link in the description of this video. Thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and back to your regularly scheduled programming. Okay, for those of you watching that did not catch this is part 2. If you want to be able to see part 1, there's a part 1. Also, for a part 3, I was considering this. Would you like me to be able to analyze the footage of Gabby and the person that she let into her house as well, the nonverbal communication during that, to see if there's anything alarming or telling in that on any level? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, let's go ahead and start the analysis.
Intuition and connection with the spiritual worlds, but technology took over. I have my own beliefs about philosophy and time and history and who we are as humans, and I will never stop being an individual who thinks freely. That being said, I'm also mentally ill. They're not mutually exclusive. I believe, especially now with these experiences, I have a lot to offer the world, and I have a lot of knowledge and insight that I can share. But I love to see silver lining.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. So yeah, if you've watched part 1, now we're picking right back into where we were before, picking up right back in. You got it. Anyway, so we're still dealing with the same information that we dealt with last time and all of that. So we're pulling that across, and now we're just to catch back up. She's talking about how she believes in various aspects of things, but then is also trying to be like, but I am also mentally ill, and I don't know. I just find that whole portion of things a little interesting to me, especially just the logic behind it. And part of what she's trying to cover here is talking about how she was claiming to be the second coming of Jesus Christ, which is just, it's a fascinating thing and not unheard of in manic episodes. But let's go ahead and keep watching.
See silver linings, and the silver lining to this is I feel like I can now serve as a precedent or a spokesperson for mental health, which I have always tried to do, and now I feel like I get to really do. You get what you ask for. And I feel like we're in this fucking simulation where everybody pretends now like mental health matters, destigmatize mental health, and if people are going through a mental health issue, still let's attack them and make fun of them, and maybe a decade later we'll free them And as far as mania or
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pause here because there's a few things. One, always tries to find a silver lining. I just find that ironic that, again, just due to the patterning that we've seen from Gabby in the past, she has some sort of difficulty, and then there is a release of some form of work that she's done, and that has been there again and again and again. It seems to be doing that again. So I'm sure a lot of people are watching this and thinking to themselves, no, the silver lining really is the paycheck that you were hoping to get from the selling of your new album. I'm not sure that that's the case here. The nonverbal communication is fairly subdued throughout it, even down to where she's laughing and whatnot. That does lightly reach the eyes, but you can see that this is all fluid. It doesn't feel very forced in this specific area. However, it is still an interesting pattern that's being played here that it just feels like it would be remiss of us to not notice this again, but let's keep watching.
Mania or hypomania goes, just because somebody's manic doesn't mean they're dangerous to themselves or anybody else. Just because somebody's saying things in a way that you don't like or that you don't understand or that you don't agree with or you find offensive in some way does not mean that they're dangerous and does not mean that you should be calling the police and putting their life in danger and wasting the resources. If I wasn't actually like a sane person and had a good head on my shoulders and had my fucking chakras balanced and practice yoga and eat healthy.
Okay. Go ahead and pause that there real quick because, again, we're going to be talking about some of the interesting facets that they're trying to pull in here. So she's trying to make excuses for how one can speak in manic episodes, and then also talking about how basically everybody that saw her behavior as alarming was more or less wrong and incorrect, and that a person can act in any way that they want, and it doesn't mean that they're going to be harmful to themselves or others. So that's the side that she's trying to present with this, which is still an interesting thing, and many people did have issue with this, was the feeling of her scolding everybody who was concerned for her arguably very alarming actions. And if this was a PR stunt, then this is exactly what Gabby planned on playing out. But if it's not, then this just means that there is an actual pattern of behavior here. And there are some alarming red flags that went through her TikTok meltdown, but then also even the way that she's addressing it here as well. This is all very fascinating to me, but let's continue on forward.
Really fucking check in with myself and journal. If I had seen those cops and tried to run, if I would have tried to attack them, if I would have freaked out and screamed hysterically or kicked my feet around or like caused chaos, like I could have been really hurt or I could have been taken to a mental hospital, and I wasn't, because even though I was in a manic episode, that doesn't mean that I'm need to be locked away and need like treatment or adult supervision 24/7 or to be shot with medication. Like, no, just let me live in my fucking little nest that I built. Like, I'm a pretty solitary person. Like, I spend a lot of time alone. I spend a lot of time with agoraphobia and really severe anxiety. I do have OCD, ADHD, CPTSD. A doctor once told me that I'm likely autistic, but I didn't pursue an official diagnosis because if you're autistic
Now she's talking about a string of mental conditions that she has been diagnosed with or has been told that she might have. And then it gets around to this point of autism. And when she brings up autism, there's a stop. There's a halt in her verbiage where that catch means that she's having difficulty getting those words out next. So something big's about to happen. And then she reaches up and she starts doing some manipulators. Her blinking increases, and that spike in nonverbal activity there lets us know that there's something around that might be more questionable. And then sure enough, she's like, but this, there's a lot of stuff that's up in the air for that, and I'm not sure. And that is very fair. So obviously in that area, there is something that is causing her that difficulty. But let's go ahead and keep watching to see what she says.
If you're autistic in America, you can't adopt a baby. Like, there's so many things that are wrong with our systems. It's insane. Like, it's so hard to adopt a baby in general. And if you're autistic, which there's so many varying degrees of autism, and so many people with autism may be better equipped parents than people who are deemed mentally normal or typical. It's just all fucked. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this shit, but I'm not a danger to myself or anybody else. But I do appreciate.
So another thing that she's now doing is grouping herself in along with just other various aspects or people or divergencies. So this entire thing has nothing to do with Gabby and her possible autism diagnosis. There's nothing to do with that in this entire scenario that's being carried out. However, she has now taken that and used it as somewhat of a fuel for her own perspective or her own side, and presenting that forward as just more ammo. And so that does feel a little bit manipulative, but I don't even know that that was intentional just because of the way that it verbally flowed out. Just keeping that in mind, along with that non-verbally, we could see that she's doing a number of shrugs in there. Now, these are such large shrugs, and they're timed in with the points of the sentence that she's saying there to where it is synchronized. So that doesn't mean that she's feeling any level of insecurity or insincerity on that part, but more so that the non-verbal communication is amplifying the verbal communication. But let's go ahead and continue watching.
Anybody's concern if you called out of concern, but please don't do that. Thank you. I love you. Okay, so if you don't know by now, I love the number 7.
Okay, and just in response to that, Gabby has more or less said, allow me to behave as alarmingly or possibly dangerous or any form of maybe ill-considered, just anything. Allow me to behave however I want, put it onto the internet, and even if it's observably very difficult, problematic, questionable, perhaps dangerous behavior, don't interfere or don't do anything with it. Allow me to do without any form of accountability. And that's not what you want to be able to hear. Yes, Gabby, I think you're right that people need to be more considerate of the situation and how you're feeling, but also I think that you have to have patience for the people who saw the presented behavior and decided to call it in because of that and that alone. There is a mutual relationship there. So let's continue watching.
The number 7. So I think this is going to be the last one, but I did want to address why I deleted them all or most of the videos. The first reason is just that there were so fucking many of them. I feel like that's why a lot of people were calling me manic in the first place, which was actually really triggering and probably took me out of a hypomanic episode and into a manic episode. I feel like I get so defensive so quickly because of just like the constant fucking mental abuse and her.
Okay, gonna go ahead and pause here. So this is where she's now counteracting fully. If you watched the last video, she said that the police visits caused her to go from a hypomanic to a manic state. Now she's blaming it on the comments, probably causing her from going from a hypomanic to a manic state. And many people had even brought up the point of the fact that she was acting a little strangely before police ever got involved in the situation. So there's that inconsistency as well across this story. And it does feel a little blame shifty for them to be pushing it around on various other areas and causes, and rather like they're not wanting to own up to possibly not have making the best decision on the internet. And especially if this was a PR stunt, something along those lines, then this has a lot of negative connotations for the mental health communities in general if this isn't a genuine thing. So I just find that fascinating that that's already coming out here, but let's continue.
And harassment I get online, I'm like very quick to fucking build my walls up. It doesn't take a lot of time to post a TikTok. It takes anywhere between 3 seconds and 3 minutes. And yeah, they just change so much in content and context. Like when I went back to the beginning and I was watching it, it was just spoken word.
Okay, so pausing it here, like I said, I went through and I watched all of these, and there were so many TikToks that she did put out in a very, very short amount of time. And she's saying, well, it's so easy to put out a TikTok. It did, 3 seconds to 3 minutes and it's done, which is true, but there are many things that you can do in a short amount of time, but that doesn't mean that you'll do 50 billion of them all at once. Like that's not necessarily how you should view a thing. So just because you can put out 50 TikToks per minute doesn't mean that you should put out 50 TikToks per minute. Like, it just, you should, that whole argument doesn't make much sense. And that's why people were saying, okay, but just because you can do it, it's still alarming. It's just as alarming that it happened. So that's why everybody's concerned. But let's continue.
Just spoken word poetry about homeless children and homelessness and religion and aliens and witches and numbers and the Matrix and the simulation theory. And yeah, I screamed in that video, the help me video, because I am trying to get attention on it. But just because I'm responding to a poem with passion and emotion and performing, that was performance. Help me, help me, help me, help us. That was performance. But then when it turns into people calling the police because they're not listening to what...
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause here again. Now, this performance part that she's talking about, when I watched the initial portion of these spoken word poetry things, it was very obvious that it was done for the sake of getting attention, especially even here, she's mentioned, yeah, I was doing it because I want to get attention to the subject, is what she says. So she's already admitted that on some level, she was doing a theatrical performance to get attention to what she's saying are these various topics that she's passionate about. But what I find interesting is that she's now mentioned that she was trying to appear on some level theatrically a certain way to communicate those things, to get that attention, and then is trying to say that it's so far beyond her to want to do something like this, like put on some form of performance to get attention for something, like maybe an album or something like that. So she's admitting to doing a thing to a lesser degree, and people are calling her out for doing a thing to a further degree. And that's where a lot of the contention around this has sparked up on the internet. So let's just continue seeing how they address.
They're not listening to what I'm saying in context. They're just looking into the drama of it, and now it's like a whole different fucking thing. It did spiral into something else. So when I look back at those videos, I'm like, this is actually sad. A lot of them are sad. A lot of them to me are funny, and a lot of them to me are still incredibly clever and artistic in ways that I don't believe that people give me the credit to, give me the time to look into the spelling and the grammar and the punctuation and realize that I am actually doing something really intentional. And that's fine. That's fine. And most importantly, I just didn't represent myself.
I'm not totally positive as to where they're saying the grammar and the spelling and the punctuation on the spoken word poetry, to where we would be able to even check how that's going. So I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments below if I'm missing something. Perhaps they put out written work for you to be able to do that on, and there's some sort of deeper hidden meaning there, and possibly so. And then also throughout that, you could see the small micro shoulder shrugs in there, and this is possibly a sign of insecurity, as I said, or insincerity. Since it is smaller, it's less likely to be consciously controlled, and therefore might be more reliable as an emotional tell rather than just a communication method. And then the other verbal stuff that we've already talked about, and the possible interesting pattern that shows up here that they then deny. Let's continue.
And most importantly, I just didn't represent myself or my points well in certain places. And I'm not afraid to offend people. I think that good art offends people. Like Lady Gaga showed up on the red carpet in a fucking meat dress. That pissed people the fuck off. It was offensive to a lot of different people.
Okay, so this is now fascinating as well. Earlier, Gabby compared herself to Britney Spears and the situation that went down with that. And now Gabby is comparing herself to Lady Gaga and something that went down with that. And what's interesting is that Gabby is comparing herself to people that have found more success or are more successful than she is in similar media streams. But she's not at that same level, but she's trying to draw that line of comparison. Now, a lot of people have talked about how Gabby seems rather egotistical in her functioning, and that might be showing up here as well, as the comparisons that she's drawing is between herself and these arguably much larger names in the music industry. But let's continue.
A lot of different people, right? That's art. You want people to talk. Warhol was highly controversial. Da Vinci in his time was controversial. Van Gogh never sold a painting, cut off his fucking ear. Everybody thought he was crazy. Poe died a poor fucking alcoholic. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is when I didn't do myself or others justice in taking the proper
and now again, she's gone through to compare herself to like legendary figures throughout history as well. And it does kind of seem self-inflating to say, you know, like my art is, I'm pretty much like Leonardo da Vinci with my art that I create. And I don't think that many people watching those TikToks, I know I wasn't thinking that. I don't believe many people watching the TikToks that she released thought to themselves, this is reminiscent of Van Gogh or Leonardo da Vinci. Perhaps somebody did, but that's not the feeling that many people got, or go the alarming number of calls into the police. But throughout that as well, non-verbally speaking, we're seeing a lot of micro movements no. So those micro movements no can be difficult to interpret fully. They can either be a desynchronization, as a person says an affirmative thing here, specifically in the US culture, which is where Gabby is functioning through. A yes like this is a yes, and a no like this is a no. So up and down, yes, left, right, no. So the little desynchronizations of she's saying a positive thing, but shaking her head no, that could be a sign that she's not being fully authentic there. But since it is also lining up with the mindset of you wouldn't believe, or this is unbelievable, or this is ridiculous, and that element of unbelievableness, that also comes in there as well. And that does line up with the words that she's saying. So those micro movements, no, those do line up more solidly with the words that she's saying as the you would not believe, or I find it ridiculous or unbelievable, than for it to be a desynchronization and for her to be lying. Let's continue.
Taking the proper time to adequately express my point, because my heart is pure and I love all people. And sometimes in trying to prove a point or do any type of irony or satire or trying.
No, what I found interesting about this nod when she was like, and I love all people, that specific one was very, very small. And also she leaned back ever so slightly. I love all people. And along with that, obviously, no, nobody loves all people. It's quite impossible to love all people, but you could try to love all people. But even on that, there is obvious logical mathematical difficulty with that, but it seeps out in her nonverbal communication as we get to see her body more or less disagree with what she was saying. But let's continue.
Trying to highlight an issue, it just misses the mark. And I missed the mark a couple times, but I'll fix it when the time is right. I know I said the last one was the last one, but this is the last one, because I never cause drama or fake anything to promote a project. And people are always like, every time she has a project coming out, I always have a project coming out. And I'm always mentally ill. Oh my God.
Okay, I'm gonna pause that there. So that's her response to the, oh, is this just a publicity stunt? Is that like, no, this isn't. Now, what I find fascinating non-verbally is that this is where aggression and frustration and anger seeps in, because sure enough, like everybody expected, an album was out, an album was released, and it lined up just oddly close with this entire incident. And now when people are calling her out about it, she gets defensive and aggressive with it, not only pulling out the pointy finger, as if you've watched this channel for a minute, you know that this is a very dominating and demeaning gesture. You do this when you want to like talk down to a person, is when the pointing finger comes out. Otherwise, you have other gestures that you can use that aren't nearly as offensive as the pointy finger. But then along with that, you can see her getting more animated with her general nonverbal communication and moving forward more and becoming more broad with her gestures as this agitation's creeping in. So she's very frustrated by the idea of somebody presenting that this was something for one of her albums, which is, once again, it's just a hard pattern to ignore. So this is the last little clip here. This was done much later as a realization portion of this entire thing to help put things into perspective, but let's see.
God, it was the edibles. I didn't even think about it until somebody commented that the kid who fucking lied his way into my house filmed edibles. Like somebody commented, oh, didn't they show edibles on the floor? And there were on that floor right there, I had a green plate, and on it was my bowl, weed, and a bag of edibles. A long time ago on my YouTube channel, I told the story of why I don't fuck with edibles, and it's because I hallucinate on them. I'd only tried them a couple times. One time, somebody gave me a brownie, and I literally saw people's auras, and it was like this crazy intense experience. And then the other time, I accidentally ate some chocolate, not knowing it was edibles, at a party, and then somebody was like, "That's edibles," and I was like, "I'm gonna go home," and then I literally saw the fucking Grim Reaper in my bed. For real. Like, I literally said that. But over the years, people always recommend edibles to me, and I always said no because I hallucinate. But I had a few packages of gifts. That some were gummies and some were Wally drops, which were like these hard candies, right? So the past couple weeks, I was like, I have these fucking edibles. Like, let me fucking try them because my throat was hurting from smoking, and I was just looking to do something other than smoking, right? That's where the fucking difference happened, because life changed for sure. I was having some different ass fucking experiences for sure. Oh my God, dude. Hold on. Bro, for those who have a negative reaction to edibles, the symptoms can include a racing heart, excessive sweating, anxiety, paranoia, hallucinations, and delusions. They can cause people to freak out. Clearly, edibles have a more severe toxicity than inhaled forms, and the effects are psychiatric in nature. And I knew that, bro. I literally knew that. I told stories on YouTube about it. Bro. I still have my own theories about delusions and hallucinations and how mental health and mental illness in general is actually just like modern man's excuse or explanation for the divine because it freaks them out. Okay, you know what? 99% of the reason y'all think I'm crazy is because I don't smooth down my hair before I film. Hi, Fred. We've been in bed since 8.
And that's the end of that video. So that was more or less what she hung the entire thing on, was the usage of these edibles, which then I also find fascinating. If she uses edibles so rarely, would it not stick out in her mind as more of a prominent event to be brought up more early to literally anybody? Because if she herself said that she knew that she would react this way, which some people can react negatively to edibles or to cannabis in general, if she knew that she reacted that way and she knew that she had had edibles, nobody accidentally just takes edibles, you have to consume them. So if she had those as well, then that would have been something that would have popped up much more early in her explanation of things. That's where I find that just very fascinating. And then just the fact that this occurs so much later on in the storyline, like this is very well after. Now, perhaps it could be because of the possible traumatic feelings around the event to be able to play devil's advocate for Gabby on this. It could be that, and that made it difficult for them to be able to recollect, plus that with the manic state or the general use of cannabis that day in general. Perhaps all of those things coming together really did make it to where she couldn't remember that large of a detail, that large of a very important detail. I'm not positive. And to be able to see how this all did play out in context with the rest of their music career, there are just elements of this that seem suspicious and seem like they may have been more orchestrated than initially thought. Now, to be very clear, since this is a YouTube video, it is meant for the sake of entertainment and information. You can't use this to be able to present in any law enforcement or judicial matter right now because it's not the full analysis, and because nonverbal analysis really does work best in hand and in tandem with other forms of research. That's how it functions most strongly and is most useful. So with this, please consider that and do some more research as well. If I have missed anything during this, please let me know in the comments below. If you want me to do an analysis, like I said, of Gabby and the guy that she let into her house and all of those clips, let me know about that as well. I'm considering starting to do some stuff on TikTok, some shorter form things that you request, so that it's not like, well, it won't fit into a YouTube video, but it might do that on a TikTok or an Instagram reel, or I might even post them as YouTube shorts as well. Any of those things. Working on some fun things for Patreon. Honestly, there's just a lot of stuff that's rolling around, and I'm excited to see what happens. But But without further ado, that's all that I've got for today. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome, as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.
If you're looking for trouble, you came to the right place. If you're looking for trouble, look right in my face. I was born standing up and talking back. My daddy was a green-eyed mountain jockey, 'cause I'm evil. My middle name is Misery. I'm evil, so don't you mess around with me.